This video contains spoilers. Watch the fucking show! To all of you who watch my videos, this is just a straight up public service announcement here. You may not believe this, but I do in fact read your comments. And so when I hear the same things over and over again from you guys in the comments section, I start taking note of that. And that brings us to the topic of today's video, which was an anime that was recommended to me so many times I couldn't ignore it. I had to watch it. There's just so many separate people telling me to watch this one anime. And that anime is Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy, which is an isekai anime that came out I think around 2 years ago. And I've actually heard of this anime. I had seen it a few times. I saw some clips of it when it was airing, but I never got around to watching it. And I think I just forgot it, honestly. And since this came out, I've gotten way more into the isekai genre. I started doing way more videos on YouTube, and I've basically become a isekai anime reviewer. So when the recommendations to watch this anime just came in, I decided to do it. So going into Tsukimichi, I wasn't sure what to expect, because just judging from what I'd seen from the pictures and everything, I mean, it looked like, kind of your stereotypical isekai, because all the pictures I just saw this, kind of bland looking guy, and then these two hot girls on his side, and magic powers and kind of magical looking stuff. So I was just like, okay, let's roll into this. I'm gonna be expecting my usual isekai formula, and I was right, but also wrong, if that makes any sense. Tsukimichi is such a weird isekai because it's generic, but it's not at the same time. Like, I honestly am having a hard time describing it. So for any of you guys that don't know what Tsukimichi is, the basic premise is that our main character, Makoto, is of course transported to a new world. This is done through an interaction with the Japanese Shinto god Tsukuyomi, who's the god of the moon. And Tsukuyomi basically functions as a middleman for this transaction. He's basically been contracted by the god of this new world and is trying to transfer a person from Earth over to this fantasy world to be their hero. And so Makoto is chosen, and as it turns out, Makoto's parents are actually from the world he's being transported to. Makoto being transported to this new world is basically payment for the parents leaving the other world and coming to Earth. And so Makoto is transported to the new world and meets the goddess of this new world. Unfortunately for Makoto, the goddess is not how you would picture a typical deity. The goddess basically only values like external looks, and Makoto, while not being necessarily a bad looking guy, he's said to be like average looking for Earth. To the standards of the new world, he's considered like extremely ugly. So the goddess just immediately reneges on the whole deal. She doesn't want Makoto to be the hero. She drops him at the edge of the world and is just like, okay, I'm done with him. And before she kicks him out, she even says like, oh, don't be laying pipe in my universe because I don't want you, procreating your genes and stuff. Like, I was like, dang, this lady is cold. So already we're deviating from the basic premise here by having our main character kind of like get kicked out of the role that every other isekai protagonist gets pushed into. And so to make up for this whole botched scenario, Tsukuyomi blesses Makoto and just tells him to be free and just live life how he wants in this new world. And so the story basically starts off with Makoto adventuring through these wastelands he's dropped into and meeting the various non-human races that reside in the wastelands. So something interesting that's revealed to us pretty early on in the show is that humans are the only race on this planet that receive the goddess's blessing, because she's extremely superficial and she only views humans as like the beautiful race. And like a running gag in the show is that like every human being in this world is like gorgeous, while Makoto isn't necessarily an ugly guy. He's just way like less than these people are. And so because of this, all the other non-human races live in like kind of squalor that Makoto is dropped into, and he ends up meeting a lot of them. So my interest got pulled pretty early because of this kind of unorthodox setup. So Makoto is extremely OP in this new world, but I really liked how they introduced it through the plot. Like, why is he OP? And the reason he's OP is actually because of his genetics. And being a offspring of people that are from the other world instead of Earth. Because Earth is so devoid of magic, being on Earth for him was like the equivalent of the gravity training from Dragon Ball Z, basically. And now being in a magic-filled world is basically like removing the limiters and he can finally access everything. I just thought that was a neat spin on giving our OP protagonist, his powers and everything like that. And so our main character journeys through the wastelands, makes friends with a lot of the demi-humans, and basically starts his own civilization. So really there's three main characters of Tsukimichi. That's kind of how I see it. There's Makoto, our main protagonist, and then there's his two attendants who he makes contracts with. There's the dragon Tomoe, and then there's the spider Mio. They're both great as main characters in the story. I really enjoyed like their quirks and stuff, like how Mio's thing with the food, and also Tomoe's kind of obsession with samurai and everything like that, and like basically modeling herself after like these historical dramas that she sees. I just thought their personalities were really funny, and so they definitely worked as supporting characters. So Tsukimichi honestly felt a little bit to me like that time I got reincarnated as a slime, because it follows our isekai protagonist basically doing a non-human route, which I always find a little more interesting, interacting and living his life with non-humans outside the traditional mold of what we see in fantasy anime. So I compare this show to Slime Isekai, but if I'm being honest with myself, I don't think this show is as good as Slime Isekai. We didn't get enough. Like it was basically just following plot, but there's a lot of sprinkles of interesting things that were introduced to us in this season, but I think it needs more time in order to really flush those out. So something interesting I liked in this show is kind of the world dynamic, because I was still trying to figure that out. The humans in this show, of course, have been blessed by the goddess, so they have much more fortunate lives. All the other non-human races are viewed as kind of like enemies and like lower class citizens to the human race, and our main character has basically joined this disenfranchised side. Also, like, humans are kind of the traditional good guys in a fantasy setting. Usually the non-human races are like kind of the bad guys, so we've almost done like a switcheroo. I almost feel like we're getting the series presented through the perspective of Makoto, because basically Makoto has been persecuted by humans and their goddess, basically since he arrived in the world. So he views the demi-humans probably more favorably than he does the humans. And so also with Makoto as our main protagonist, while he does seem like your generic isekai main character, there's definitely been showings that he is a much more complicated character than what we have seen in the show so far. The scene that really got me thinking about it was when he killed that human adventurer. Clearly he's gone through some stuff in his past, and he has some sociopathic tendencies as well. He's obviously got some sort of mental block. I think there's more to Makoto than meets the eye. Unfortunately, we just haven't had enough time. The anime hasn't really dug deep into those things, and I think that's really the major problem of this anime, and why I don't think is as good as other isekai that I've seen kind of in this same vein. I think the more interesting things are a little bit deeper, and they're there, and I know they're there. It's just the anime hasn't really gone into them yet. We have Makoto's parents, like what happened with them, what's going on with them. They had like a little lore explanation about like people that travel to other worlds. What about Makoto's past? What's going on with his mental state? Like, is killing a person gonna affect him? Like, why does he have these sociopathic tendencies from time to time? What's going on with the goddess? What's going on with the demon war and everything like that? What side are we really on here? Like there's a lot of things we could do in this world, like that could be really, really interesting and kind of deviate from the formula here. Really, Tsukimichi is kind of in this difficult area for me in terms of like isekai, because it has the potential to break into that threshold of like those really amazing isekais, but like it also has all those other things going on with it, that are super generic and kind of normie for isekais, that are like balls and chains holding them down and keeping it from breaking through. Like if it just spent more time exploring those really kind of unique things that this anime has, I think it would be better. That's why I'm very happy that a season 2 has been announced, because that'll give us more time to dive into those deeper things. I like it. I definitely think it's in the higher echelon of isekais, but really that's not saying much at this point. But I just don't think it's done enough with those interesting kind of like tidbits and, things about the world. It hasn't explored those enough. But it has a lot of really good things going for it. Like, holy crap, that last battle in episode 12 was amazing. I loved that. Also, the opening is straight gas. The opening is amazeballs. It's such a good... That opening slaps so hard. I have listened to that song probably like 50 times. Technically, the show's great. I just think it needs to pull a little bit more out of what's there, and it could really be a great isekai. So that pretty much sums up my general thoughts on Tsukimichi. I think it's a good isekai. I do think that people that like the genre are going to like Tsukimichi. But I also wouldn't rate it as like, in the same vein as like Tanya or Drifters or something like that. Like, because it definitely still follows the mold of an isekai, but there's things there that could help it break out of that eventually. So overall, a pretty good isekai. I'm really glad you guys recommended it to me. I should have watched it sooner, and I'm really glad that I did, and I can't wait for season 2. I'm definitely going to watch it. So I'm sure we're going to have differing opinions on Moonlit Fantasy, but that's okay, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Please leave your thoughts on the series in the comments section below. If you guys have more anime recommendations and you want me to make more videos on these anime, please hit that like button to let me know. And if you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out more than you know, and it'll let you know when I post in the future. With that being said, I want to thank you guys for watching to the very end of the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.